Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
What is going on, everyone? Sean here with Rendered Reality. It is just me tonight. Tyler was not able to make it. He is headed home from work a little bit late. A little bit of a random stream tonight, but we're going to talk about Madrid Noir with James A. Castillo, and hopefully I got his name right. I had to ask him ahead of time.
You got it perfect.
Awesome. Well, why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction about what you do, what you did with Madrid Noir, and a little bit about the experience. Just tell us a little bit about it.
Oh, that like right away? Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, my name is James Castillo. I directed and wrote with the lovely guys at No Ghost a VR piece that you can find in Oculus Quest now. It's called Madrid Noir, and it's a 45-minute sort of passively interactive film. It follows Lola, which is the main character, through two moments in her life. I just sort of try to uncover a mystery that she went through in her youth when she was spending a summer in Madrid. And then you, as a player, you kind of like help her find clues and sort of help her sort of develop some of her theories about what happened, and then you sort of see the twist and the reveal at the end. But I don't want to say too much.
Yeah, you don't want to say too much for sure. But so, what is your background as far as being a director? Is this the first VR piece that you've worked on?
Yeah, well, this is in a way is the big brother to a smaller piece that we did a couple of years ago. So I come from the animation industry. I'm mostly a designer, art director for films and TV and commercials and stuff like that. But a few years ago, I started developing my own projects, and I had worked on art directing a piece called Melita, which came out on the Rift about in 2015. It's like one of the very early
Oh, yeah, that's
animated
real
stuff
early.
yeah, it's really early in the Oculus Rift, and that was my first experience in VR, and then through that I started developing an idea that would eventually become a Noir, and that became a small short film that we did that only had like a few of the characters that exist in the project were in this short film, and we were testing out a few ideas and sort of seeing if this whole theatrical world concept that I was thinking about, like if it really worked. And that short film, that was my first experience directing something in VR, and that went through some festivals and got us in touch with certain producers, and we started pitching the idea of making something bigger. But definitely, I didn't know I was going to go into a 45-minute long thing.
Right.
That wasn't right away our expectation. And then, like the opportunity was given to us to do something, ambitious and big, and we took it, and we started production Christmas 2020, so just like January 2020, so just before the pandemic.
Oh, yeah. So that it
And
took you
then
a little over a year then to
yeah,
fully
a little
flesh
bit
it
over a
out.
year. Yeah, a year and a half, easy,
Yeah.
to do it. But yeah, this is like the first time that I do something this big. And it's been. But again, I would not have been able to do it without my friends at No Ghost and Atlas 5, and the guys from Oculus were really kind to like really supportive throughout the wole process. So I owe
Awesome.
them a lot.
So
Yeah.
how many people are on the team that all worked on this? A lot.
Well, we were doing, yeah, it depends, because there's certain sections of the project that required a lot of manpower, especially because we're doing something that is keyframe animation. So it's like 45 minutes of keyframe animation is a lot of animation, like all just like character animation to this quality it was our intention from the beginning to do something of you know in our dreams the highest quality that we had seen in VR at this point, right? And that took us getting, I think, at the highest point, we had 8 animators at the same time. And on and all between modelers, designers, producers, music, all that stuff we were like between 35 and 40 people, I think, at the highest point.
Goodness.
And then it was pretty big. I mean, for like 8 months or so, we were like a big machine working with a lot of departments. And then the core team, so No Ghost and myself, and so the core people that did we are about, I think I would say like seven people really are the ones that really shouldered most of the work towards the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with having a background in animation, commercials, all that kind of stuff, what made you want to take the route of VR? Like, what made you think, oh, I need to make a short film in VR? Like, what was the process of getting to
Well,
that
it's
point?
okay. So it's because it was when I sort of fell in love with VR with the stuff that Google Spotlight was doing. So those experimental short films that you know like things like Pearl or Son of Jaguar or especially Age of Sail, that really blew my mind. And coming from animation, I kind of saw that as like this sort of this weird new land, undiscovered and untamed, where maybe someone like me that was a nobody could like potentially come up with an idea that could actually get made and could actually be interesting. And so and I really like the idea of embodiment. Like that was something that was new to me. I mean, I guess it's the one thing of VR that you can never really explain to anybody that hasn't experienced it. And when you go through that, there's this emotional attachment that just happens instantly when you are in that space with other characters. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I can capitalize on that a little bit and use that to create a story that really, sort of resonates and really works. Because I do remember discussing with the guys from No-Gos like early on that we kind of felt that a lot of like experiences that were coming out were all experimenting with interaction and narrative, but it was rare to find a true hybrid between them. Like I think like we all agree that Wolves on the Wall probably was the closest thing to what we wanted to do. But people normally would either go full on the game route or full on the just passive narrative thing. And we wanted to find that golden zone in the middle where there's interaction that is motivated by narrative, but the main driver is the story, and you fall in love with the characters, and all that stuff sort of connects. And again, that's something that could only happen in VR, because it's the only place where you have an outlet for something like this. If I were to do a half an hour, I like, what would it be? Would it be like a pilot episode for a TV show in animation, and it just wouldn't be making anything new. It would be sort of like just doing something that we've all done before. And this kind of gave me kind of completely revitalized the idea of doing something like noir in animations, like in VR. You do in VR, that's going to be really interesting.
Right. I mean, anytime you go into VR, like you said, there's very much an emotional connection. So you can watch, I feel like you can watch a film on TV, and yes, some films, some movies and stuff, you do feel an emotional connection to, but not like you do in VR. I mean, it's more of a memory sense than it is an experience that you watch. You know, when you do something like Madrid Noir, you're inside that story, and that story is kind of revolving around you and specifically being told to you. You know, there's a personal level that happens inside something like this. And then when you add the interactions, and I don't want to give away all the interactions that are in the experience, because I want people to experience, but there definitely is moments in there that you're part of the story, and something that you're doing is reflecting inside of that world, inside of that story that's being told. So it's definitely something very cool. And this isn't something that, I mean, primarily I'm a VR gamer. You know, that's mainly what I do is games. So I haven't had a ton of experience with a lot of these stories, but I have some. And I know in chat, people are talking about, Fluke Rogi said the Google Spotlight stuff was great. If you've not seen it, look them up on Steam. VR Spry guy said Age of Sail was the best Google Spotlight story. So, I mean, I definitely think
100%.
Yeah, I definitely think that there is, like, this is kind of, I mean, not an untapped area of VR, because it had, you know, we have had stories and stuff, but mainly VR has been a lot of gaming. So to see some of this stuff start to come out, I mean, what do you think the future of this kind of stuff is? Because VR in itself is still early. So there's all of these things that are still being tested throughout VR to what works, what doesn't work, what works well, what doesn't work well. Like, where do you see this going in the future for VR stories?
There's a lot to impact in there.
Right.
I think, yeah, so just before I forget, because otherwise I'm going to completely forget about this. When you were talking about films and connected them to VR stuff, and the emotional connection, there's something that we realized when we're talking about it. It's internally, I mean, is that there's always a certain level of detachment with a film, because there's always an element of you are. It almost feels like you are watching the retelling of a story that already happened, right, and that is being reenacted, and you're kind of seeing a version, an interpretation of something that already happened. You are never there in real time when the actual anecdote happens.
True. Yeah.
Whereas in VR, even though it's recorded, even though it's all planned, it's all animated, because you happen to be embodying a character in that same space, it does feel like you are living something in real time. So it really feels like stuff is unfolding in front of you, and that's where there's almost like a highway to the emotional core of the story, because the moment you see Lola looking at you with like an eye dart and just like knowing where you are and being aware of your presence, and that's my one of my biggest joys is when I see people like they just talk back to her all the time. They always like talk to her constantly, and because it does feel like you are being welcomed by a living, breathing person.
Yeah.
And then going back to what you were saying about the future and where it's going, and the idea of stories within the VR space. I mention Google Spotlights because they are really the sort of the giants on top of whom shoulders we've sort of stepped on, right? Or I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
but
that makes sense. I got you.
yeah. So, but it was like they were the first ones sort of like starting to realize that you had to create a specific language for your film. I use a lot of times Perl as a good reference of a very smart idea that feels the story and not only motivates the story and gives you a narrative device to tell the story, but it also uses VR in a very smart way, which is Perl when you are in the car, and by being inside of the car, any cuts that you do, any change of scenery that you do, you are never you never get sick. It's never completely like, it doesn't like pull you away from the story because you're always on the same spot and you always have frame of references. You never get lost. And because the car is such a character in the story, you are basically sort of living through that car, what's going on, and that connection. I was like, this is something extremely clever that these people are doing. So they were deciding or realizing that you just couldn't go too crazy with VR without running into the risk of losing people's attention.
Right.
And that's something that for us was very early on a worry of ours, where like we need to create certain rules to on how does the interaction work, or we're gonna especially being something so long, like if you have a very choppy narrative, people just get bored after like 20 minutes of constantly stopping narrative. And I see the future going in I mean, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I do see it going in this direction. I think the more this technology opens up to creatives, there'll be more people that want to explore narrative through it. I mean, it's only natural as a society, and as an industry that people come into this new technology and start figuring out or asking questions like, how can I use this to tell a story or to make people relate to something that I think is important. And the same way that we took other people's works as reference, there'll be people that will take Madrid Noir as reference, and they will do something completely different that we cannot even think about at the moment, right? Like, I do see this as like, it's almost like when cinema or cameras were invented, and the only thing they were doing was recording a theater play. And then slowly that camera starts moving into the characters, and slowly it starts doing close-ups, and editing becomes a thing, and then slowly the language of cinema is sort of appears after a few years of experimenting. There's still not a very clear idea of what the language of VR is. It's quite vague.
Yeah.
So it's going to take a little bit of time for more people to keep exploring, to create basically to train the audience on how to watch VR. Because right now, I remember talking about this with a lot of people, that a lot of, especially producers and companies like Oculus, they're always very afraid of like, you have to do things that are very subtle, and they like nobody gets sick, nobody it has to be really easy, and that makes perfect sense. But at the same time, I think until the audiences are more used to the medium, we are a little bit sort of handcuffed to their understanding of the medium before we can really get loose and go crazy with it, right? Because there's a lot of us that the ones of us that we have spent enough time on a headset. We really want all the weird shit. We want people to come up with like crazy ideas and crazy ways of using it, and we are ready for it because we get it.
I like to push the boundaries. I love the boundaries getting pushed in VR, but I mean, and it is, like you said, it's a very new medium, and there's so many more possibilities and difficulties as well, because when you're watching a flat screen film, it's very easy for them to shift your focus on what they want it to be on. You know, when you get into a world
Yeah.
of VR that is a living world where there can be things all around you or whatever it is, it is harder, I'm sure, as a director to make sure that what you want to be seen in that part is actually seen by the person watching it. And I'm sure that, you know, that's something that has to be figured out as well. But, and I also think there's a lot of possibilities as far as, I mean, you can do storytelling in a sense that can shift sometimes. Like you could even have, I don't know if you guys have talked about this or thought about this, but like films that where you have a decision to make in the film that, you know, changes the trajectory of the film in the end, you know,
Yeah.
and then it could be multiple experiences where you could go back and make different choices. You know, and there's just a lot of possibilities when it comes to VR all the way around. And I mean, it's very exciting to me, but
100%. I think like that's definitely like that was something that we considered to do, and to some degree, I think if you play the game more than once, you realize that it's all very controlled environments, but there are options on things that you can do, and different things will happen depending on what
yeah.
you do.
I,
But
I mean,
it's in very controlled spaces, because the problem with branching a story like this into many different possible endings is
right,
that from a production point of view, you are essentially making three different movies,
right.
and then one person is only going to watch one version of that movie, and
That's
then
true.
all the
Yeah.
other stuff, all the other, 2 hours worth of material that you've made, they might not see it.
Yeah. They never
It
see it. Yeah, that's
sounds
true.
great, like, so until that becomes a little bit more doable in terms of budget, it's going to be quite hard to do, or
Yeah.
and unless you find a very economic way of doing it. What were you saying before that was really interesting? I wanted to tap on. The directing the attention of the
Yeah.
audience, right? So yeah, you have to, it is hard, because we are so used to the cinematic language, right? Like, we are writing a script, and all of us have watched at least 500 hours worth of cinema in our lifetime. At least easy.
Yeah. I would say so. Yeah.
So we have a story in our memory, like so many types of shots and types of like editing tricks and stuff like that. So when you're reading a script, you can start making up in your mind, like, oh, we're gonna do a close up here, we're gonna do a follow through, we're gonna do a pan, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, no, no, no. And you start making the story in your mind. When it comes to VR, you know we if anything, we've seen maybe 50 hours worth of VR, right, in film. So there's very little resources that we can use to tell the story. So we had to really early on, like, dissect exactly like what are gonna be our rules. So that's where I had seen all the projects that took a lot of cues from cinema.
Mhm.
Personally, and this is a very subjective take, it doesn't work. Don't take this anybody as a rule, but I feel that whenever anybody uses the player as a camera, and you move the player around, and they have no control over the movement,
Right.
and you start forcing them getting close to characters and then moving around, I don't like it. It's something that I feel that sort of takes away from the embodiment, because then you
Right.
realize, like, oh, I'm just like a floating ghost that I
Yeah.
have
I'm
no
not
control.
actually in the environment. I'm not a part
Yeah.
of the story as much. I'm a
Yes.
tool instead of a, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I
and
can totally understand
and
that.
that's where I remember thinking, I feel, and again, this is something that I use words like feel, because, like I said, like, there's no way of knowing for sure if you're on the right until you test something, right? So I had a hunch that if you took references from theater much more heavily than from cinema, you would have an easier translation from medium to medium, only because of the fact that in theater you are embodying someone in the same space as the stage, as
Yeah.
the actors, as the sets. So um, that was my guess, right? That it would be a little bit easier. So then that also gave us certain rules that we could use. It's like, because one of the things that I was always a little bit concerned is that if you do cuts, and you cut to black, and then you make the audience appear in a random new location,
Right.
there was always going to be about a second where they are going to have to spend looking around just to understand the space that they're in,
Yeah.
and that's
True.
a second that you lose of them following the story, right? So that you end up creating this very slow tempo where every few minutes people have to, like, get lost for a bit, and then come back to the story and follow it again, right? And I wanted, because we were going to do something very long, I wanted to make sure that we could be as effective with this fake editing as we could, right? So
Right.
the idea of, okay, well, let's make it like a theater then. You will always be in the same spot, and the only thing that's going to change is not really changing. You are changing locations, but you're changing the set rather than changing the entire location. So that means that you can do scenes very cheaply, because you can make like a park with a bench and a street light and a tree, and that's all you need. And then, because it's theater, people like accept it. It's like, oh, this is this world, is how it works.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
So that way we could like tell stories much quicker. And I think like on the first episode, for anybody who hasn't seen it, there's a moment where there's like a chase through the city. That's one of my favorite bits, and I think it's because it happens very quick. It's like a very sort of like constantly moving, constantly like new things happening, things popping up, and it's a very engaging bit. But again, like what I'm trying to explain is that it wasn't. We really had to dissect the rules and then build up the experience within this very constrained rules that we had built.
Right.
So every scene that we wanted to do wasn't just like, we'll do whatever crazy shit we can think of. It's like, no. Let's go down to our like rules that we built, and like, what is the best way to do this? Like, how would they do it in a theater play? Would they? Because I've seen plays where they project, for example, I think, well, this is not a spoiler, it's fine. There's a moment where we use, in some theater plays, when you want to show a close-up of something, right? A photograph or a prop or whatever. Sometimes there will be a camera that projects what is seen in like a screen on top of the stage. So then you, as the audience, you can see like, oh, there's a key or a photograph or whatever. So we are like, oh, well, if it's important for the audience to see that this letter that this character is writing or whatever, well, let's go back to theater. Let's figure out how they would do it, and then let's see if we can do something similar to that. And then that's where there's a scene where a character is typing a letter, and you are seeing in real time how that letter is being typed in a big projection in the back. Right? So it's resources like that just makes things. It's at the end is all delivery mechanisms. Like, you just want to make sure that all the information goes to the audience as effectively as possible. So it's all about like being ingenious about it and quick. Anyway, I think I've sort of gone into this like massive monologue.
Well, there's definitely some surprises too. Like I definitely don't want to give this part away, but there was one surprise towards the end, as you're really figuring out the story and what happened, that really surprised me, which was awesome, And I also, in the experience of this, I often push the boundaries of everything. And so in the larger space that you're in the house, when they're going through some of the items and stuff, I actually have a pretty big VR space. So I actually walked around the room quite a bit.
Oh, nice.
And I didn't stay still. And I like that it gave me the freedom to do that, because some things will lock you in one spot to where if you move, the walls will go black, or if you move, the whole scene will try to move with you. So I actually explored probably a little bit more than what I was supposed to explore, which I thought was pretty neat. And there was also a lot of interaction, a lot of stuff in the story you're able to pick up, not everything, but depending on the scene, a lot of things you are able to pick up. You're able to open drawers, you're able to open things up. And to me, that is very important in VR, because when you take that element away, it really makes you feel like you're not really there. If I can't interact with the items there, if I can't pick them up, if I can't open a drawer, it's just very limiting. So that was one thing that I definitely was impressed with, because it's not just a film, it is an interactive, immersive film. And those kind of pieces I think are really, really cool. So
you have been really, really kind. I would say, like, I for us, it was important to make sure that, that we are basically dealing with somebody telling you an anecdote, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty much like the basic sort of structure of it, right? We thought a lot about, like, when, we how can I say this? We need to feel that we can affect the world in order for the world to affect us. I remember, like, that was a line that we keep throwing around, like that. If we, like, there's no way anybody's going to be invested in this world, or it's not going to believe any of the gravity of the the weight of what's going on if this world just feels too unreal and too wacky or too like ghostly. So like by giving you the access to touching things and to feeling that this world is real, you are essentially like telling the players like this world is as real as how can I explain it, like as you being in it, right? And when you're interacting with different props, there's a risk of sort of falling into this gimmicky side where like, well, you can just then do whatever you want and I don't know, like paint a dick in a thing or whatever. It's like, well, we have to be not so much that that's our fear, but it's okay. Because we're doing like a mystery noir, right? And there's an element that I remember like thinking about this. There could be audience members that think that what Lola is telling them is a lie. Right? And I was like, okay, why don't we use props at the beginning that would essentially, you don't know it when you are interacting with them, but they are foreshadowing something that she's going to tell you about.
Yeah.
Right? So there's this one prop that is like a coaster with a note to meet up in a place at a certain hour. Right?
Right.
It's like a little note. And it's the coaster of a bar in which that you are going to see later, because Lola's going to tell you about it, and you're going to go to that bar and you're going to see the scene where the meetup happened of that note. And by doing that, you are essentially creating this subconscious like read from the audience being like, oh, this is all real because I have the evidences in my hand.
Yeah.
So therefore this happened. So a lot of these things, they feel very, very sort of gratuitous, but all these things, like they have some thinking behind. Like there's always all these props give you an opportunity for storytelling. So there's certain photographs, there's certain like there's a ticket, there's a train ticket, and for anybody who's seen the story would know what train ticket is for, what that is for, and things like that. So it's foreshadowing stuff that's actually going to happen. So they do serve the story.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a cool environment, and it's definitely an environment that is very interesting. And you kind of don't, when you first started out, obviously you don't know exactly what's going on. You don't know where it's going to lead, but there are, after getting all the way through it, then you think back to some of like what you were talking about, some of those things that you picked up and that you looked at that actually did foreshadow some of the story to come, but you don't know that at the time. You know what I mean? You don't know that right off the bat, but yeah, it is so is this going to be any kind of like an episodic kind of a thing? Because the ending leaves a little bit of mystery. You kind of know what's going to happen or how, like once you get to the end, you know what the next scene should be, but it doesn't show you that next scene. Like it ended and I was like, oh, I want to see that next scene. Like that was the ending of the story. I want to see it. So is there any kind of plans to spin off of this or anything?
Yeah. I mean, talking about the ending of a mystery is always a tricky territory, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to say a lot of things about it, but I know most people probably haven't seen it. But I remember like there was, I mean, so difficult to not talk about this. There was definitely, there were definitely conversations about fulfilling the frustration that I know you and most people felt, right?
Yeah.
But there was. We knew that we didn't want to distract from the real protagonist of the story, right? I think I can go further than this. But if you understand that the climax of the story is Lola sort of fulfilling her personal journey,
right,
then that ending works perfectly fine. I think that was really what we were like discussing. Is like, do we really need it to do that? Would it take away from the actual growth of the character if we were to do it, this other way? In terms of doing more, we definitely have outlined an idea of what would happen if we were to do another one.
Okay. Will it play off of this one, do you think? Like, do you have a plan to do a episode 2?
It starts like it would start like right after the end of this one. But whether it's going to happen or not, the powers that be have to sort of grace us with the opportunity of doing it. It's something that, a project like this took many years, a lot of serendipitous situations, a lot of like luck and timing. So now we have to see sort of how the project develops, how it grows, if it finds an audience, and We'll see. Like if there's any if there's interest, there's definitely like from our part, we definitely have like the muscle and the ideas to do something else.
Awesome.
But see.
Yeah. So what other VR games and stuff have you enjoyed playing? Because I think anything that you do in VR sometimes can alter like your ideas and stuff. You know, things that you've done in VR that you loved and stuff like that. What games and stuff have you played that you're really enjoy?
In VR,
Yeah.
I really like. Okay, well, I mean, there's a little bit of everything. I think
Right.
there's Alex.
Oh yeah.
Half-Life is definitely
Half-Life
something
Alex.
that
Oh yeah.
it's. I haven't. I think that that is the apex of any VR game. I think it's something that I didn't know what VR could do until I played that
Yeah.
game.
I can agree with that.
It's pretty insane narratively, mechanically. Like it's flawless. It's pretty fucking flawless.
Yeah.
Can I curse? Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
I actually have a button, but I'm not usually fast enough. So you're good though. You're good.
It's that one's great. I really enjoy Moss.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if you know, like, but that's because I come from very like action RPG type of games that's the kind of stuff that I've always liked to play a lot, and that Moss really like it really like tickled
Yeah.
like the kid in me.
And there's a
Really-
second one. They announced there's a second one coming. So there's a Moss 2 coming. Yep.
Really?
Yep. So that just got announced like what, a week ago maybe? So
Oh
yeah.
shit! I had no idea. This is amazing.
Yep.
This is great. Okay. I look for the news later on. But that's really good. You and I were, you know, we were talking about Demio.
Oh, yeah.
That I really like. And then, you know, like, but there's a lot of narrative stuff that is really interesting. I think, like I said, Walls on the Wall
Yeah.
is really cool. Paper Birds. The guys that the 3DAR is a company in Argentina that made it. They've also worked with our producers Atlas 5 on different projects, and I had been following them for a while. They did a project called Gloomy Eyes, and then this one is the follow up.
Yeah. I've actually heard a lot about Gloomy Eyes. I need to check that one out. I haven't tried that one, so I need to.
It's been out for a while. It's one of those projects that again, like, it sounds a little bit ridiculous when I say like this, but it's almost like there's no project that doesn't break some ground, you know,
Right.
because it's so new, this
Yeah.
medium, that whatever you do, you end up. So there's a lot of things on Gloomy Eyes that we took cues from this, and then Paper Birds basically takes all the stuff that they learned with Gloomy Eyes and they tell a whole new different story, but like already knowing much better how to use the medium.
Yeah.
And it's really nice. But yeah, I don't know what else. Vader Immortal was fun.
Oh yeah.
That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you probably, through the time of working on this project, I'm sure you didn't get as much time to play maybe as some other times when you're busy with this project. But and you also do a podcast as well, right?
Yeah. Like, let me talk about a little bit about this like not doing VR. Like, when you were working on it, we were spending so much time in the headset and discussing about it that I just couldn't. When I got back home, I just couldn't put the headset back on to do anything else. But I know there's been a bunch of new things coming out, so now I just have to like go back and try it and sort of see what's new in VR. And
that's a good problem though. That's a good problem to have. You have a whole bunch of new stuff to check out.
There was a moment, because we started this project when the Quest wasn't even out, not even Quest 1. So only in seeing how much the VR industry has changed in the last like 3-4 years or so, it's been pretty crazy. And the fact that now there's like, if you don't keep up with it like every couple months, there's a lot of new stuff coming out like crazy. So now it's exciting that the VR space is actually growing so much, because it means that the more people are investing in making content, it means that there's more people like watching it and consuming it and talking about it. So it's becoming more and more mainstream, which is what we all hope it does.
For sure.
And then like I just feel bad sort of plugging stuff. There's not a plug, but yeah, I do have a small podcast with some friends. I think Max might be even in the audience as one of the co-hosts with me. It's called Negative Space, and like I said, I come from the animation industry. That's what my background is, and I sort of team up with a couple of friends of mine from the industry as well, and we talk about stuff that sort of is interesting to us as designers and as artists, and there's quite a lot of me talking about Madrid Noir as well, and the process of making it, and the creative process of making something like this. So anybody that is interested on creative processes and how to sort of develop ideas and stuff like that, it might be
it might be a good one. I know, like in our Discord and stuff, we have some very talented people that have done a lot of really awesome things in Blender and stuff like that.
Sweet.
Is just absolutely incredible. So I know Fluke Rogi's done some stuff. Steve XM does all kinds of really cool stuff in Blender. So definitely something that I think could be interested in watching. What did you say it was called again?
It's called Negative Space Podcast.
Negative Space.
You can find it in you can find it in Spotify and Apple Podcast and all that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really nice. But it's at the end is building a little bit of community, right?
Right.
I think that that's something that I really like the way you guys have set it up. Yeah, there is Max Vilitsyn is right there.
I just saw him say
right there. But yeah, I was gonna say something and completely. Oh, Blender, real-time engines like Unreal Engine. We did the project with Unreal Engine, and this is something that for anybody that is listening to this that it works in this industry or works in animation in any way, I would say like spend a year learning Unreal, because I've seen it develop in the last 4 years, and now I'm everywhere I go that I get to pitch ideas and projects, I'm like telling them like I want to do this in Unreal, because it's completely changing the way that you think about the pipeline of making a film in animation. Is completely like this is going to shatter studios, and it's going to create opportunities for new types of filmmaking to appear within the animation world, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, definitely. And Fluke Rogi just posted the link in there for the Negative Space podcast too, if anybody's looking for it. So awesome.
Fluke.
Yeah, thanks, Fluke. So I know you can't speak on sales numbers. I know Oculus, limits.
I don't even know.
Okay.
I don't know any of that.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if you were happy with how sales were going and stuff like that. But if you don't know any of that information, it's probably hard to say.
I try to keep myself away from that information, because it's almost like, I'm very proud of our baby,
right?
And I don't want to all of a sudden be disappointed because it's not making sales or whatever.
Right.
I'm like, that's not the point.
Right. Right.
The reception has been very positive. Like it premiered in Tribeca, where it got like quite a lot of very good press early on.
Awesome.
And then it was in the Cannes Film Festival, and then in the Annecy, which is an animation festival as well. We were just nominated for the Best VR Experience of the Year award.
Awesome.
So it's getting traction, and people are making notice. This has been featured in some podcasts, and like this one and some other ones. So the press has been very, very candid. And then the players, I think, as well. Like there's always those there's always people that feel that VR should be, or like there's only room for one type of experiences in VR,
right?
And they're a little bit reluctant on trying new things. But I think that time would just like spread, not spread. What's the word looking for? Would just prove that VR can be used for all sorts of types of like creative endeavors. And I think like gaming is one of them. But I'm actually much more interested in like whatever happens with traditional filmmaking, even like documentary filmmaking. Like the moment this starts opening more,
learning,
that's
just the fact of learning using this kind of medium in VR. I mean, if I could have been in school as a kid and been able to watch history or whatever else it is through VR, the power of VR and the memories that it creates, I would have had such an easier time learning. That it's such a powerful tool. And I mean, even this kind of a VR storytelling, if you want to go the route of teaching something through that, it's a very good way to do it. Like it's so powerful. It really 100%. Is.
And I think like the more you broaden sort of that market, that's when you're going to start bringing the people in.
Yeah.
You're going to be saying it to our moms, our aunts, our uncles, our cousins. Like that's where everybody comes in, and everybody gets to have a headset.
Right.
And it's like having a headset should be like having a TV, right? Yeah. You can have a TV and you can use it to watch Marvel shows, to watch anime, or to watch whatever you want.
Yep.
Documentaries, TV shows, whatever. This is the same thing. You have a headset, and then there's a variety of things you can do with it, right? And I think that's but again, like I know that that's just like part of the timing, right? Where we are still at that point at the moment where the audience and the products are still sort of like having almost like a negotiation between them, like each other, saying like, are we gonna like this or not like this, or are we gonna support this or not? But like I said, I'm very proud, and the reception is been extremely positive. So
yeah. Good
Thank
stuff.
you, everybody.
Yeah, good stuff. So yeah, if you haven't checked it out, it is available now. It is on the Oculus Quest store. There is a link in the description. So if you're having trouble finding it, just click the link in the description. That'll take you right to it. Currently, I think it's $8.99. So very affordable. Lengthwise, it's right about 45 minutes. So it's not like one of those things that you jump in and it's done before you realize it. You know, I feel like that's a good length of an experience for this. I definitely think it's really cool. So definitely make sure you check it out. There's also a Gleam giveaway going on. So we're going to give away another key. I think that ends this weekend. So you can sign up for the Gleam giveaway in the link below as well. So anything else you'd like to add before we wrap it up? I know it's getting late your time. So time zones are always a pain in the butt.
This is, I'm warming up now. So yeah, if anything, like I have nothing else to say. If anything, like if there's any specific questions that like anybody has, like I'm happy to spend a few minutes just like answering whatever direct questions that you guys have.
Yeah. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put in chat. I'm gonna read through a couple. Paul P. Jr. says Illumet is a sad story, and so is Gloomy Eyes. So I haven't tried either one of those. So Wolveraza says VR is magic. Techno Glitch likes Vader, and he also said textbooks suck. So, and I mean, I can agree to a certain extent. I mean, it's definitely, you know, getting away from a textbook and into a VR experience is going to be such a experience for kids in the future. I really do think that is the future. Wolveraza said, I want to buy it though. Good luck, guys. Paul P said, Gloomy Eyes is 30 minutes.
Rachel wants to know if there's going to be an art book. I hope so.
Yeah.
Like we have an immense amount of art that we've done for the project, and because it's, you know, everybody in the team like really wanted to craft something very unique. Like we are definitely now building to create. We want to do like a few different sort of limited edition things. Like the art book will be one.
That'd be cool.
And then also we are very proud of the soundtrack. So we want to do like we are trying to get it published and to do a small like vinyl run with the soundtrack. That would be really cool.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
For sure. So, and Flukerogi had a similar question. He said someone asked earlier if there would be a book of the concept art for Madrid Noir, and it sounds like that could be a potential.
Yeah, man.
And Marcellus Wilson said, any tips to make Eve look better for production? EEVE?
What is Eve?
I'm not sure. I thought maybe you would know.
Yeah, I wish I knew.
I'm not sure. I thought maybe that was like some art lingo or some animation lingo. I'm not sure. Not sure what that is.
Look at that. There's a few people commenting about the art book. Okay, well, Juancho, look, Juan A. Crespo, he's right there. He's the art director of the project.
Oh,
so
awesome.
We can just tell him, like, Juancho, just like start working on it then.
There you go.
Just like, there's no excuses now.
People definitely want it. I mean, I think I actually have some I have some Demio stuff that they sent. You know, I have the actual physical board game, as well as an art book that they sent for book 2. And I love that kind of stuff because I put it on the shelf. You know, I think that kind of stuff is really, really cool, especially when it's an experience, you know, that you've done and that you enjoyed. I think that kind of stuff is really neat. So I would be all about.
Yeah, I didn't know there was like a board game of Demio.
Yeah, well, it's not an actual playable board game. It's kind of like in the box with the little characters and stuff. It's more of just a decoration piece. But it's really cool to have still. It's really cool.
Yeah, it sounds really cool, man.
Yeah, so we have a great episode of the pod with the co-writer of Madrid Noir coming up. That's on the podcast, right?
Yeah, that's in the podcast with Lawrence Bennett, who's the writer with me, and there's the co-writer, and then he runs No Ghost, is the studio that made it in London.
Awesome. So definitely, the link for that is up above. If you scroll up, you can get the link for that podcast if you're interested in checking that out. That'd be really cool. And Marcellus, I think he was the one that asked about the Eve. He said Blender real time. I guess is that what Evie? Do you know?
Well, real time. I mean, we can talk about real time more if he has any specific questions.
Yeah, I don't know. I know nothing about Blender or anything else, so this is not my wheelhouse, and that's definitely something you'll have to answer for sure. But maybe
that's all right. What are some of the
maybe eyes
VR,
instead of Eves?
VR projects that you like, that you really like you've been playing lately, that you can recommend me to watch? Yeah.
Well, one of my biggest VR addictions is Population One. That's what I have. You
I
never
don't
heard of
even know
that?
what that is. No,
So it's
I'm writing it down
actually
right now.
it's essentially a battle royale shooter game, but it is highly addictive. Very good game. That is probably one of my most played games recently for a while now. But also a big fan of Demio. We talked about that. Let's see. Contractors. I'm actually, so for me, I'm a big first person shooter kind of guy. So that's what I
Mm-hmm.
mainly come from like
Mm-hmm.
Xbox and stuff like that. So for me, those are the biggest draws in VR. And for me, I kind of play a little bit of everything because with doing the show on Saturdays, we kind of have to talk about all of the games that come out, and all the experiences. So I dabble in a little bit of everything, but Population One is the one that just keeps me coming back. It's a
Yeah.
group of three. You get in there with three friends, and it's basically a battle to be the last team standing, and it's very very addictive. It's a ton of fun. So
I'll check it out.
yeah,
There's one question. If you want, we can answer that and
yeah.
then
Go ahead, go
sort
ahead.
of call it done.
Yeah,
Why choose noir? I'm assuming that you're talking about the genre of noir in general.
yeah,
That was a very personal choice. Like from the beginning of the project, I already talked a little bit about the idea of the theater as being sort
yeah,
of a distinct sort of element that from the beginning. Then there was the element. I've always been a big fan of genre films like that, whether that's like sci-fi or western or noir or whatever. And I always feel I've always felt that in animation there's a lack of that sort of stuff. It's sort of very family friendly, very sort of coming of age stories, but there's a lack of genre filmmaking with animation. And I kind of made it my own little sort of project to try to bring that as much as I can, of course.
yeah,
And I felt that when it came to making a story like Madrid Noir, there was an element of themes and aesthetics that are attached to something like noir filmmaking, whether that's the black and white,
yeah,
there's the lighting, the shadows, the way that you present the city, sort of the sets, the way you do all that sort of stuff, the 1930s, the fact that it's happening just before a civil war. Like there's a lot of themes and that are kind of around that like in our story that work really well with that type of like noir like type of story.
yeah.
And then it gives us so many cues that are visual that we could use mixed with the theater to create something that was interesting. And like if we were to do a western in VR, for example, I wouldn't even know if I could use the theater as a way of doing it, because then like so much of westerns, for example, is massive spaces, big
Yeah.
vistas, like big space, right? Whereas in VR, it's all about like small spaces, shadows, like alleys, small things. So it kind of like lent itself better visually to do something like this.
Awesome.
Um, and then there was the Madrid element, of course, because we could have done it like technically this could happen in Chicago or in New York or in whatever, right?
Right.
And I thought at the beginning of doing something like that, but because I'm from Madrid originally, I kind of felt that it would be more genuine and more interesting, and it would give it a little bit of a flair if we did it in a place that looks familiar to people because it's Europe in the 1930s,
Yeah.
but it has certain elements that are more specific and unique. And at first I was a little bit afraid that it would make it a little bit too local, but it's been the opposite. It kind of like it gives it enough of a exotic flair that people like it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Awesome.
that's it.
Definitely awesome. I'm definitely interested in checking out a sequel if that does come about. That is something that when I got to the end of it, I was like, oh, I want the next scene. So that will be
Okay,
something that I'll be keeping my eye out for,
I'll
and
let Oculus know.
possibly a art book as well that could be coming. And we got gamer tag in here in the chat as well. So just saying hi to him. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. The game, the experience is out now. It is on the Oculus Store. It's in the description below. So we definitely appreciate you coming on. Even though it was just the two of us, Tyler wasn't able to make it. I think it was
Had a
a
great
lot
time,
of
man.
fun. I really enjoyed learning about this kind of medium. I definitely am excited where this medium goes as far as VR, because I think the future is definitely very, very bright. So thank
Yeah.
you for being a pioneer in the space, and we definitely look to see. We're definitely looking forward to see what else you guys do. So
Thank you so much. You've been so kind, and thank you for everybody to hang out with us.
yeah, for sure. So everybody have a great evening, and catch us back here on Saturday mornings for Coffee and VR, and we will see you all later.
Bye.
See ya.